Hello everyone to our third international best practice session as part of the tourism recovery program. We had so many inspiring sessions already, speaking to experts on our program focused topics, both in these international live events and in the local sessions. My name is Simon Reuter. I'm a program manager for NPACT, and I'm joining you today from our headquarters in Berlin, Germany. The topic of today's event is very important to us, as it combines two things that we believe will shape the future of tourism and all other industries more than anything else: sustainability and innovation. If we want to keep this planet habitable without giving up on all the great things that humans have invented and built, we will need both. And this is particularly important in the tourism sector. Travel industries build on intact ecosystems. They build on cultural diversity and on stable and on secure environments. At the same time, however, tourism is one of the biggest contributors to the climate crisis, and in the shape of things like over-tourism, cultural exploitation, and unfair labor practices, tourism has repeatedly shown its dark side. So we have to build a future of tourism that is green, fair, inclusive, and resilient. And for that, we will need to be smart. All of you here with us today, you represent some of the most forward-thinking startups in your country. And it will depend on your innovations and practices to build a better tourism for the post-COVID world. So today's session is aimed at inspiring you to do that. And that is why it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you my co-host for this event, Lotte Kustermans from our trusted partner, the TUI Care Foundation. Hey Lotte, over to you.
Thank you so much, Simon. Also hello again, everyone. A warm welcome on behalf of the TUI Care Foundation. As you know, my name is Lotte, Program Manager at TUI Care Foundation, and I'm joining this session today from my home office in Berlin. As Simon said, this topic is very important to us. I think tourism entrepreneurs like you are not only challenged to manage their responsibility, the impacts and footprint following the triple bottom line of people, planet, profits. But I think you're also challenged to understand, improve, and innovate for new market demands. So that's why we've invited our outstanding experts today, who are highly experienced on the topics of sustainability and innovation. To give you a brief overview of what we are going to do, what you can expect from this session today, we will have a 90-minute session where our experts will share interesting highlights and cases from their long-standing professional experience. And we have two different topics today. We will start with a video from the UNWTO by Natalia. She's the director of the Innovation, Education and Investment Department. And then after the video, after the UNWTO part, we move on to a slightly different topic, which is about reducing waste in the tourism sector. And this part will be delivered by Hendrickx, founder of Travel Without Plastic. And of course, you also have the opportunity to ask your questions to the experts at the end of the session.
Yes, thank you, Lotte. That is true. You can ask your questions, and you know this game from the last live events that we did. Please make use of the chat to bring your question forward. So if you have any particular question, especially to our experts that are here with us today, namely Hendrickx, please post the question in the chat. Our team in the backend will collect these questions and then bring them forward during the Q&A session so that our expert can answer them live.
Super. I would say get ready for an insightful session on sustainability and innovation. I would like to start by introducing Natalia Bayona. Natalia leads the Innovation, Education and Investment Strategy Department at the UNWTO, which is the UN specialized agency for the promotion of sustainable tourism. With a diverse background in politics, also destination management and business, she has become the first innovation director at the UNWTO. She has introduced entrepreneurship and education as key factors for tourism and development, and has positioned the UNWTO as an innovation benchmark within the wider United Nations system.
Yes, unfortunately, Natalia cannot be here with us today, but she has recorded a fantastic video message for us, and we will now share this message with you.
Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here today with you. Today, I have the honor to talk about the challenges that tourism is facing thanks to this pandemic. I have to say that the challenges of the tourism sector are the same before and after the pandemic. The thing is that COVID-19 has accelerated these challenges. I would start by saying that the 5 challenges that the tourism sector has are: first of all, innovation; second of all, education; third of all, investments; fourth of all, added value jobs; and fifth, or last but not least, sustainability. When we are talking about innovation, the main focus of our job is improving the tourism innovation ecosystem. I have to say that thanks to this journey, we need to improve the connection between governments, startups, investors, academia, of course, institutions, and the national governments. Today, I have to say that those connections have been improving the way we are innovating. Nonetheless, we need more pilot projects between startups and corporates. We need a more serious supply chain between providers and corporates that are buyers of those technologies that the startups develop. We need a more interesting venture capital culture. Just some facts and figures. The last year, $22 billion were invested in tourism startups. That's amazing because besides the pandemic, venture capital was increasing. Nonetheless, those entrepreneurs and those startups that received investment, 80% of them were based in the US and China, that are the more mature innovation ecosystem. So my question here is, what is happening with the other countries? What is happening with the tourism innovation ecosystem? We need to improve more in order to bring those capitals to emerging markets as Latin America, Asia Pacific, and African countries. That's why our role through startup competitions, challenges, innovation forums that are the UNWTO Tourism Tech Adventure forums are part of the key strategies in order to foster a more mature tourism innovation ecosystem. Another fact, I don't know if you know, but from the 100% unicorns that are enterprises that are valued on more than $1 billion, only 5% are from the tourism sector. We need to help the internationalization process of the entrepreneurs. We need to connect them with investors, with corporates, with governments, etc. Second great challenge that we have, education. I don't know, once again, if you know, but this is really important. Tourism is the top employer of women and youth. Nonetheless, 50% of the young, talented minds working in tourism only have secondary skills. If we want to develop a high-level economic sector, we need to improve education. And digital education is here to stay. Thanks to digital education, we can scale up the way people are educated. Our aim this year is to have at least 30,000 new students in our UNWTO Tourism Online Academy. And how can we do this? Of course, developing partnerships with top universities. It doesn't matter if they are focused on managerial or vocational skills, but we need to improve the way people get a certificate in order to have a formal career and a formal professional path in the tourism sector. And of course, if I'm talking about innovation, that is the sector for youth. If I am talking about tourism, that is the sector of youth, of course, innovation and education has to be aligned if we want the third challenge, that is added value jobs. As I already said, 100 million jobs are under risk thanks to this pandemic. But of course, if we don't have people with a professional certificate, if we don't get the tools to help them to access, how we can preserve those jobs. So that's why inside our public policies from national governments, in our commercial strategies from the corporates, from the big hotel chains, from the big airlines, from the SMEs, in every single company that is working in tourism, every single company needs to have an innovative mindset, but of course, a strategy to train their employers to be better and to develop what always the people that work in education says, to be a lifelong learner. It means to study, to learn, to relearn, to unlearn, but we need to help people to gain new skills, skills on technology, skills on big data, skills on how to measure and how to deal with artificial intelligence. But on the other side, to deal with humanities, because this is the more human economic sector. So of course, we need a hybrid model between bringing leaders full of commitment, of communication skills, on political skills, but on the other side, we need hard skills as well. And that combination will help us to create a high-level economic sector. Fourth of all, of course, we need investments, but not any kind of investments, green investments. Why green investments? As you have seen, tourism decreased by 75% during 2020. I have another fact. Foreign direct investment decreased 75% as well. So if we want investors back, of course, we need economic incentives, tax incentives, and everything related to political and legal stability with, of course, a very serious framework. But our aim in the UNWTO is to promote green investments, to promote that investors bring their capital to create sustainable cities, more modern cities, but of course, inclusive cities, inclusive destinations, inclusive amusement parks that are full of commitment with the environment, with technology, with the human beings. And of course, that thanks to their investments, we can create added value jobs focused on the power of tourism. That's why we have been partnering with the International Development Bank, with the IFC, and with other international financial institutions, because we know that together, through a legal framework, through a political stability, and of course, with a multilateral message on what we know that will recover the sector again, we will have a very powerful message, and we can help investors to develop a tourism investment culture thanks to this framework. And last but not least, of course, sustainability. Most of the people think that being sustainable is about working with the environment and for the environment. And to be honest, being sustainable is not only talking about the environment, it's about at least working with communities, working with the most vulnerable people, working for inclusion, using technology for good, and of course, to take care about the environment. So, of course, after this pandemic, I have learned, and I know that you all have learned about how sustainability needs to be part of our lives. So if we develop a more sustainable framework where innovators bring solutions for a more sustainable development, if we bring green investments, if we create curricula inside the institutions in order to promote sustainability, and last but not least, if we add value through our jobs in order to take care and to give back to the community, thanks to the tourism sector, we are using the sector to become from important to relevant. I know that today you will have a lot of conferences, but I would like to end with this final message, that is, the responsibility of recovering the tourism sector is from all the tourism ecosystem. Is not only the responsibility of the UNWTO, is not only the responsibility of the governments, it's not only the responsibility of the private sector. We all need to recover the tourism sector. To recover the tourism sector, responsibility is part of our job, and educating people, improving innovation, working on added value jobs, and developing a more modern, sustainable, and innovative tourism will help us to recover this sector again and to lead by example by using resilience and by using this high-level network that is the human network in order to improve the way people live, the way people travel, and the way people are educated. Thank you so much and enjoy the journey.
Great. Well, our thank goes out to UNWTO and Natalia Bayona for sharing these messages, these important messages with us. And even though Natalia could not be here with us live today, I think we have another outstanding guest from UNWTO joining us. In her talk, Natalia pointed out how innovation in the travel sector depends on healthy startup ecosystems and good connections between government, startups, and investors. And there's probably no one who knows better about this than our next guests, Miguel Ángel Figueroa Calcina. As the investment principal at the United Nations World Tourism Organization, he is working at the intersections of innovation, investment, and digital transformation. He has a track record as a generator of income and fundraising that reaches a portfolio of over 800 million US dollars on projects for economic development, but also as an entrepreneur working on tech-based innovative ventures in Latin America. An author of 3 books, he has worked with anyone from grad school students all the way to world leaders. And today we have him here with us. Please welcome with me, Miguel Ángel Figueroa Calcina. Can you hear us?
Yes, hi. Let me turn my video on.
Brilliant.
Thanks. So let me share my screen really fast. Perfect. So let me know when I'm running out of time, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so thank you so much. I will just reinforce some of the points that Natalia was mentioning before, just to give you a big picture of and to set the basis of the discussions for later on. I have 2 main points for this presentation. One is the importance of the tourism and the value chain that involves, and the second, like what are the trends that we have seen during these months after the pandemic and previous the pandemic. So actually we want to give you some insights of what can we do. That is the better question to ask. So the tourism, as you all know, is a very, very relevant sector, as Natalia was mentioning before. I don't come from the tourism sector, from the introduction that you were mentioning. And when I get into the UNWTO, I realize how powerful the sector is and how many people employs the tourism sector. And also it was interesting for me that I didn't find many data on this, because despite that they employs so many people, there is few data or disaggregated data on how much, so how many people there are in different subsectors of the tourism sector. There are some big general data from the OECD, from ILO, but there is no specific data on the different kind of value chain the sectors that involves. So just to give you an example, with a research from UNWTO, when we follow the investments, they have found more than 16 subsectors within the tourism sector. So it's very elastic. And also it brings a lot of challenges to measure the outputs of capital on the tourism sector, meaning that since everything is intertwined with the sectors, it's very hard to measure that, and therefore it's very hard to create different policies or to track the flows of investments in the sectors. In many countries, they have they implemented the satellite sector to wrap this into one big indicator. But in other countries, they don't follow the same methodology. So that is kind of one of the challenges. And also Why is this important? Because if we don't understand the components and the change of the value chain of the tourism sector, it's very hard to have a complete vision for sustainability. And you can see here from the data of the OECD about, for instance, 21% is related to transport, and the other 16% is related to food and beverage and other services. But after those percentages that are the top three, they are like other 16 subsectors in the value chain that are growing lately. Another key important data to mention, as Natalia was mentioning before, is that the youth and the women are very important groups that the tourism sector is feeding, and sometimes they are considered one of the first jobs that they have in the sector. So, and again, we need to answer better questions like what are the better quality jobs that we can provide for these young and youth, and women during this time. Because as you know, after the pandemic, it's very hard to, or has been very hard to hire, different employees for the sector once we came back to open the businesses, especially in the UK. So what is the impact of COVID? This is like a very clear picture of one of the busiest days in the summer of 2019, which was in June. We were flying about 225,000 planes. But when the pandemic hit, we kind of get about 5,000 flights that mostly were related with some materials and some supplies for trade. So that also gives us an idea of how important the transportation and the value chain is playing in the sustainability. So to move back, I have a lot of data, if you don't mind. There is the impact of COVID was very hard, not just on 2020, but also, as you can see in the graphic, 2021, we dropped in terms of international tourist arrivals that are kind of the demand-driven sector, about 85%. So this is very, very unprecedented. We've never seen these drops before, even in other big crashes in the markets or any other big swan paradigms before. In terms of capital, there is a parallelism between the demand of tourists and also the drop of investment. This is talking about greenfield investments. This is data, disaggregated data from the FDI markets from the Financial Times. So we have a joint publication together. And it's really interesting because they track all this data of the investments that they were placing in new investments in the world. And it dropped in almost 75%. So just to give you a big picture of that. And of course, this influenced the employability and so forth and so on. And as you can see here, if we see this historical data, the drop was very, very complicated. But another thing that I want to mention is that, just to be positive here, these hypes in investments were just for the last 5 years. And a lot of this growth was related also to technology investments, which I will go further down in the presentation. But also, we now came down all the way here to the earliest, like 5 years ago. When we talk about venture capital deals, as you can tell, there is also a decrease in the investments in terms of the numbers of investments, but not necessarily in the money. I will show in a second that part. In terms of the money, for instance, we have been investing the same amount of money that previous years before, even during the pandemic, in the venture capital world. So that also gives us an indication that these new ventures and the technology and the startups that are related with travel and mobility are very important, and they are still relevant and the pandemic didn't stop those investments happening. So it's something that we need to analyze what kind of subsectors are the investors are looking for, because they know that the sector will come back again, and they will be, it's one of the most resilient sectors, and they are actually preparing the ecosystem. So once we reboot again, it will be a good opportunity for them. So just to summarize this part, we came back in the levels of 30 years ago in terms of tourism. For me, the most important data here is this part here. We are putting 100 to 120 million jobs at risk during this moment, which is very complicated, really hard. We were in an event in Cabo Verde like a couple of weeks ago, actually with TUI as well. And it was really sad when we talked to the people that depend heavily on tourism, and they were unemployed. They were having a hard time, and it was very hard and painful to see that people that actually depends heavily on tourism, especially in those countries that the contribution of the GDP of tourism is very high, above 15 or 10%. It's very complicated. So the idea here is how can we provide better jobs, more sustainable business models, so these people will actually be part of the ecosystem, even in these kind of situations of the pandemics. So just to switch gears and go a little bit fast, the second part that they asked me to talk about is the drivers and the trends on the tourism, and how we tie this to the sustainability strategies down the road. From the UNWTO, we have developed these scenarios. We are estimating, this is not a model, but we are just not even a prediction, but there are scenarios that we are putting based on the data, that they will be it will take 2 years up to 4 years that to the tourism again to recover. And beyond this graphic, my question for you all is like, what can we do here in this gap? What can we do to develop different strategies? Or how can we take the best lessons from this pandemic? Or how can we take advantage of this bad situation to accelerate the process of the transitions towards sustainability, towards greening, towards digitalization? There's a lot of hype on that, but I think, and I truly personally believe, that if we do the right things in this right time, I think there's a lot of potential to do a lot of things together. So to add a little bit of insight to this conversation, if you allow me, I will suggest this. You can download these trends from our reports that is on the UNWTO website. We came up with a report last year about these new trends and this was just before the pandemic. So one of them is authenticity, sustainability, experience. You can all read that better and faster than I can explain. But the relevancy here is the sustainability, because the majority of the new demand that we will have for the next 10 years our generation, our millennials and our Generation Z, meaning that this kind of socioeconomic, this kind of the like picture of the new customers are, of course, they are native digital, they are genuinely looking for authenticity, and they really care about the environment, and they are kind of obsessed with the experiences. Just to give an example, I was talking with one of the vice president of Airbnb, and they were saying it's important for us to emphasize now the experiences, and because in the data that they have, the people, the places that they have the most engagement and more frequency of consumerism was the places that provide genuine and authenticity in their experience as well. Another key point here is the frequency of the trips. These generations and this new demand, they travel more times compared with other generations that they just went for vacations for 7 to 2 weeks. sorry, 2 weeks or 14 days in average. But now this generation just travel small trips and short trips and they have about, they travel, sorry, about 7 times, 5 to 7 times per year. So there are a lot of these new trends that you can, of course, download it in our guidelines in our website. They are free. And let me share with you some of the trends that we identified. One, of course, is innovation and digitalization, which is a no-brainer based on everything that I told you before. But since I like the data, I was researching on this, and it's really interesting to see like the levels of investments in the last, I would say 10 years, but the last 5 years, especially, they were growing very, very interesting. Of course, that was hype due to these mobility kind of cycles that we have first in Asia and then in Europe with all the scooters that you know. And also now there are kind of startups on top of that infrastructure to clean up and to track those scooters and the bikes and the rentals. And there is kind of a lot of investments on the sector. And if we disaggregate this data for the last 2 years, as I was telling you before, the levels of investment are almost the same, if you can see from before the pandemic. Of course, here was a drop during the pandemic, but in average, they were investing the same amount of money, which is a good indication. And that was kind of one of my assumptions when we kind of analyzed this data, because I was thinking like, what happened? What are the effects of the pandemic on investment? But also, what happened if we take out the big budgets that are focused on travel and mobility? And I was surprised that there are other subsectors that the investors are looking for and that are highly dependent on sustainability as well. So that was kind of like a good news for the sector, meaning that there's a lot of investment coming to the sector. So this is kind of like emphasizing the point that I was telling you. Even despite of the drop of global investments, the investment remains the same this time. This is a kind of funny chart, because you can see one of the startups that took off during this time was Zoom, as we are using it right now. But the market cap of Zoom equivals the same amount of capitalization as the biggest airline during this time. So that is really impressive to see in a graph, right? So that is kind of like, what is the next big technological change jump that we need to emphasize? So once we analyze this data of the startups that they were funded by VC or were banked by VCs, you can see the community and lifestyle. This is very related with the booking platforms, the experience platforms. Of course, transportation is a big one. But these are the kind of classics. What I want you to see here in terms of trends is this coming, emerging sectors like food and beverage, which is related with experience. There's another one related with events, to digitalize the events. There are other ones related with business travel. So there are different kind of emerging startups. For instance, here you cannot see well, perhaps, but it's energy and sustainability. There are a lot of startups that are coming in those sectors, and if we see this graphic in the next 5 years, these will be the bigger ones instead of the transportation and so forth and so on. So there is a lot of opportunities during this time. And as perhaps Natalia was saying before in her talk, it's interesting to see that the investments are made like 85%, I believe, of this. Sorry, 98% of these investments are in America and in Asia, and less than. This is a round number. Less than 1% are in emerging economies, and even like from this 1%. The majority of these investments are Brazil, are Indonesia, and India, I believe. Oh yeah, it's India here. Yeah, so it's something to really interesting to see where can we or how can we support ecosystems in emerging economies as well. Okay, so moving on, there is also the trend of sustainability and resilience. And a lot of people told me once I joined the UNWTO, they told me that the tourism sector is very resilient, and you will see. And yeah, no surprise, it's very interesting to see how people are innovating in the ecosystem. And here are some of the trends that we are seeing, especially here, for instance, in Spain, people are traveling closer. In Spain, we are working with the government in something that is called the España Rural, which is they're trying to promote these destinations that are not famous, but also they have different attractives and the assets that are cultural or gastronomy are important in those places, but also need infrastructure. There are different other kind of trends in this time related with health and safety, last minute bookings, getaways, and so forth and so on. So what is this related, or how this relates to the sustainability? For instance, in our pipeline in the UNWTO, we are working with green investments. We are partnering with the IFC from the World Bank in a project called Hotel Revitalization, which focus on hotels that are actually, not working right now. They are not in business because of the pandemic, and they are working to fund and retrofit, and make it more greener during this time. And they are providing different financial mechanisms to make it greener. You can see also more in this website if you want to learn about that and the certifications that they have. So that is happening already. We're also promoting different frameworks, mechanisms, focus on green investments as well. We team up with the Financial Times also to promote some digital tools to make more sustainable and to promote sustainable destinations or projects online. That's another thing that we are currently doing. And I put here one example from Costa Rica, which is super interesting for this conversation about sustainability, that goes beyond the recycling, beyond the consumerism point of view. It focuses on investment and how we integrate to the ecosystem. So in this project developed by Creo Capital, they are focusing on conservational finance, which is very maybe complex to explain. But what they do is, in a nutshell, is to identify these communities, and they make an assessment of their assets that are focused on biodiversity, on sustainability, on research. They have different parameters, and they package that into a financial instrument called conservational finance. Super interesting, and they are receiving funds from Canada. And when I talk to the people from London, from the UK, this is kind of like a big trend in the financial sector. Like, beyond the green investments, they are going to be specialized funding mechanisms within the green mechanisms. So this is one of them, I believe, because they team up with the communities. They create these indicators so they can actually check those indicators and make it more sustainable, but also invest on those. And it's really interesting because they are combining, like the classic projects of infrastructure, but they are being respectful with the communities, the sustainability, the biodiversity, and so forth and so on. Okay, that's one big picture, traditional infrastructure project. And the other one, of course, is the digital. One of the things that we have seen in the when we check the startups, even from our own database from the UNWTO competitions, we have seen that the startups are accelerating the process towards green transitions. And one evidence of that is the electric vehicles, startups and other startups that are coming that are related to energy efficiency, circular economy, sustainable kind of booking, blockchain, and there's a lot of like different other projects that we can actually find some examples later on.
Miguel, to quickly jump in, we're a bit running out of time. So if we can wrap up a little bit, that would be
this is
amazing.
the last one.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. So to wrap up, as I was telling you, the consumers are looking for more sustainable, and this generation are, of course, the generation and Gs and millennials. Also, another thing to consider is that the biggest population that will grow in the next 10 years are the Asian population. So if we can develop products and services that are more sustainable based on these behaviors from this part of the world, it would be amazing. So that's it. I think we made it on time. Thank you so much for your time.
Super, thank you so much, Miguel. I'm not sure if you can still hear me.
Yes, I do.
Super. Okay. I mean, there's a lot going on also in the chat, and participants share their comments and thoughts and just a few questions. They do have one question about the recovery models. And one question is about, do recovery models consider that we might face another pandemic or another like global issue that might prevent travel within the next 4 years ahead, or would that be impossible?
That's a really good question. We are working in the crisis committee with different agencies of the UN. And of course, we are trying to focus on the urgency, right? But the threat is always there. Like I was reading actually in the news this morning, that a new threat is right there, but they don't want to scare out the people. But that's a good question. But in terms of emergencies, I think there are kind of different levels of interventions, right? So we are trying to focus on the short term now, but it's something that we will consider as well.
Thank you. That's a great reply. We also received a question from Amra concerning the financial instruments that you talked about. You said, the question goes, how do they create financial instruments out of the sustainable experiences? If you could explain a little bit more on that and what kind of financial instruments those are.
That's super interesting. I was in another call right now talking about that in Latin America. And the closest I can give you is like an experience we have with Airbnb. And so for instance, they are saying like, besides the classic model of booking, right? Like your place in somewhere else, they are saying like, we are trying to leverage and to convert and engage more people that are looking for those specialized experiences.